What has changed between what it was like on your first day at Shutterstock versus your first few days now at PatientNow?
I'd say AI is probably the most critical element. The planning process used to take me 5 months to do at Shutterstock. That is now accelerated into less than a month to get ready for a new fiscal year.
What kind of skills and expertise do you think CROs need to build universally?
Ooh, I love this question. So some people call my disparate experience a liability. And what I would say is it is the thing that is going to make me nail every role that comes up, especially in a world where there's no playbook. Second thing I would say is you've got to have financial acumen. And then the last thing is a little bit of grit and resilience. Leverage your skills and competencies, but also just have the character of someone who's constantly learning.
Welcome to Go-to-Market Science, the podcast for CROs and revenue leaders scaling mature B2B companies. There's an art and there's a science to go-to-market, and we're obsessed with the science. In this podcast, we share tangible, actionable playbooks from the trenches, from what we're learning working as go-to-market strategy and RevOps consultants for our clients here at Union Square Consulting, and candid conversations with revenue leaders in the market that have been there. If this podcast delivers value, we'd love a 5-star rating and a follow. Now let's get into it.
Welcome back to another CRO Stories segment. I'm your host, Rachel Buchert, and with me today is Bridget Winston. She is the current CRO of PatientNow, formerly the Chief Revenue Officer of Chief, as well as Shutterstock. Bridget, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm thrilled to be with you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on finally. I know we kept missing each other a little bit. I had to
Yes.
reschedule, you had to reschedule, but it was for good reasons.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was in between roles, in between Chief and PatientNow, and so I had a little bit of time to myself, and so I was able to take some vacation and go to Tuscany and do a cooking course, and then also take a week and hike the Camino de Santiago in Spain.
Yeah, it's
Kind of a
amazing.
little pilgrimage. Yeah, so it was fun.
Yeah, so you're fresh, you're back at it now, you're ready to go, ready to
Yes,
kick
I'm
some
like a
butt.
week and a half, 2 weeks in at
Yeah,
PatientNow now, so it's like
yeah,
back to work, back to the
back to
grind.
work, yep. So yeah, so you just started, recently at Patient Now, and I'm really excited to talk about that, but we're gonna get to that later. First, let's kinda, rewind a little bit and take a look at your previous role at Chief. You took Chief, and Chief is for people listening, it's a membership kind of program. It's B2C as well as enterprise sales,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So you took
Absolutely, yeah, it's a consumer
yeah.
as well as enterprise, but even the consumers usually get their companies to sponsor it, so it's almost like a B to C to B, type sale, so it was such an interesting mix of consumer and enterprise.
Yeah, it's a really interesting go-to-market model. So you took Chief from 1,500 members to over 20,000 members in the time that you were with them,
Yes.
and helped the company reach a $1.1 billion valuation. So that's a 13x scale in membership. That's crazy. So
Yes.
my question about that is, as you were scaling, were there any specific moments or metrics that told you, what we're doing right now, this isn't going to work for 5,000 members or 10,000 members? We need to change the way we're doing to support the scale and this growth that we want to see going forward. What broke first, or what needed to change first?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question so much. Well, I mean, there were a couple of pivotal moments that I think over the 5 years that we were able to really capitalize on and make some quick pivots. So the first I would say is COVID, right? So Chief started, yeah, exactly. Chief started very much as an in real life experience. We started in New York only. We started in big cities only. And so we started in New York and then expanded into some of the other, let's call them NFL cities. Basically where there was a pretty large total addressable market of senior executive women, VP C-suite women from Fortune 500 executives. Those were kind of the typical ICP, the ideal customer profile that we were going after when we started. So obviously, there was some change that needed to happen immediately as we launched. We launched in 2019 in New York only. We'd expanded to different cities, and then COVID happened, and so we had to change that approach and go from something that was very in real life experience into something that was much more virtual. That is not unique. So many organizations had to do that, but we found that that allowed us to really scale our operations because that allowed us to not just be in real life in cities where we had clubhouses, But now we could offer this connection and this belonging and this feeling of community across the nation. And so in 2022, we were able to scale that nationally and not just be city by city approach. So you started to see us migrate into much more of a national play. I would say what was interesting about that, though, is that then when COVID ended, I would say then we had to transition back into that desire for an in real life experience. And now we had people who were in Boise, people who were in New York, people who were all over the place who were now craving a much more in real life experience. And you just watched all of that community and so many tailwinds and so many organizations that were like investing in DEI start to also pull back, right? So they were pulling back a little bit on that commitment. You also started to see them, see our members also start to say, "Hey, I want more of that in real life experience." And so we had to pivot in that way as well. Um, the other thing I would say is right around that time, we had launched into the UK, and what we saw there, and despite so much planning and so much user research, I will say this to everyone, even just because they speak the same language as you does not mean that the experience is going to translate perfectly. And so we saw a lot of different kind of different market dynamics there, both the willingness for companies to fund this membership, the kind of the pricing elasticity and availability of funding for a membership like this, as well as their comfort level with being in small groups, being very vulnerable. And so you watched us kind of do a lot of learnings. And then as we had to transition and think through, like, how were we going to make the US and like make our central market or our kind of US centric market succeed, we actually pulled back from the UK. And so we had to make some really tough decisions about the growth and where our biggest areas of opportunity and how product market fit is never done. You are always evolving it. And I would say, even now, and you'll see it even with Chief's most recent campaigns, we were originally designed for a Fortune 500 executive. After COVID, not everyone's a Fortune 500 executive anymore. Either there were layoffs or macroeconomic climate shifts that made those people, either not have a role in that Fortune 500 corporate, executive, or you just watched people say, I don't want to do this anymore and go into business for themselves. And so that profile of member has changed. And so I think there were so many interesting lessons, and I will forever take Chief as like being one of the most formative things I've ever done in my career because, despite the great numbers, 1,500 to 20,000, despite, going from a single city to national, then to international, despite, the $1.1 billion valuation, like there were so many interesting both pivots, but also mistakes and learnings that I was able to have along the way.
Do you think you would attribute a lot of that scale kind of during and after COVID to a reanalysis of your best ICP and like segmenting that analysis and changing it?
Absolutely. And it's really interesting. And I would say that was actually, I was able to partner with an amazing, and I will pitch them forever. It's a company called Goodwork. They use an AI tool that helped us, not because typically we were just being able to get some of the feedback through surveys of our members at Chief. And so a lot of that relies upon, the busiest women in the world answering a survey about how their position has changed. So like, are you still at Pepsi? Are you still, are you still employed by the Fortune 500, management consulting firm? And so a lot of those people, typical survey results are pretty low. And so we were able to use an AI tool to enrich our data to actually give us more information about our customer base. So that something where I thought maybe, let's call it sub 5% of my members were solopreneurs or entrepreneurs. And then to find out that maybe it was more like a quarter of them. And so what that did then is start to evolve our product market fit and start to evolve our product, because all of a sudden now that member wants something different than the corporate executive wants. And so we really informed. Initially it started off as just something we were using for lead scoring as an example, but boy, it informed everything about the way that we went to market, product included.
Okay, that's really cool. How did that work? How did that tool work? Like, how did it get the
Yeah, it
information?
it was basically it went into our CRM, and then it enriched all of the data that it can find throughout the internet to actually start to help us with differentiated segments. Segments we thought that our segments were this. This tool, GoodWork, was able to tell us, actually, you have these segments, and here are your micro, macro. You could filter it up by all sorts of things just to be really informed about who is your ICP, what are those engagement patterns that suggest that they stay with you longer, and also what do they do that's maybe different, and how do they show up differently, both in their engagement patterns, in their LTV, like their lifetime value with you. So fascinating. I cannot recommend Tom Zampini at Good Work enough. I am even thinking about using him in future projects, and I recommend him constantly.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I'll actually should probably look into that myself after our call 'cause, we do stuff like that manually all the time here at USC, and, I mean, we don't have, like, 10,000 or 5,000, customers or anything like that, so it's a much smaller number and a much easier to work with, but still, like, very interesting to see, like, how an AMI may be able to hone in the ICP. 'Cause for us, like, last year, we did a huge project on, figuring out who our true ICP was and our true, like, ideal buyer persona was, and it made a huge, huge difference in everything from the way we market, to the way even we deliver our product, and, we've been seeing a huge lift from it, so, like, yeah,
I
ICP
love it.
is so
That's what he
undervalued.
says. That's exactly what he says, and I will say that's probably the thing I've learned most as being a chief revenue officer is ICP is everything. If you are a true chief revenue officer, as I say, across marketing, sales, customer success, the thing you care most about is finding that product market fit with your ICP, those folks where you not just acquire them, but you retain them and that they become that flywheel of a word of mouth for you. It makes everything so much easier that your LTV to CAC ratio is much easier, where you are looking at, what's my lifetime value versus the customer acquisition cost to acquire them. Everything becomes so much more efficient if you are selling to the right type of customer. And it's hard though at the beginning. Like if you are a startup, you are selling to anyone because you're evaluating what's my product market fit. Where do I have that? And so as you grow, as you scale, that's probably another thing that obviously became very critically important for us at Chief as we grew. It became much more important for us to understand, okay, there's an ICP and how has our customer changed as well, so that we are also designing products to fit that customer who wants to stay with us longer.
And that was a really good point you made, like, I think a lot of, people listening to this might think like, "Oh, ICP, we know our ICP. We understand who our ICP is. We're like a 50,000,000, $100,000,000 company." But it's like, you think you know who your ICP is because 'cause you're looking at, like, the customer you sold to, but have you gone deeper? Have you looked at, like, the actual lifetime revenue you've received, the cost benefit analysis of, like, do these how quickly do these people churn? How much customer success resources do they need to use up? How hard it is to sell them? Are you trying to are you having to discount them to even, like, close these deals? So,
Yeah. Well,
you don't really know.
that's why it's so important, like, not only getting your segmentation right, but then start to do all of that financial analysis by your segments. So LTV to CAC by each of those segments, because you might start to determine that, like, oh, this segment is much more likely to be a referral engine for me. So it's much cheaper to acquire them and they stay for longer, right? Versus this is like, God, I've got to spend so much. I've got to do paid marketing to get to this customer. And so you just start to be much more informed about the decisions that you are making and more intentional about the ICPs, first off, that are in your base, or let's call it the different segments that are in your base. Where do you want your ICP to be? What do you want your financial metrics to look like? Those unit economics to look like? And then how do you design a product that actually fits that? And sometimes that takes like, a couple of reps to figure out. Obviously, we needed a couple of years to kind of figure out, okay, where are we best designed for? And then you can start to just iterate on it and then explore your adjacencies intentionally, not just by happenstance, because that just happens to be when you threw a wide net who came in.
Exactly. Yeah, we call it unblending the funnel. We've written like a bunch of content and stuff on this as well. And I think a lot of revenue leaders look at the idea of like segmenting and breaking all these things down as like, oh, it's such a chore. Like, I don't have time for that. I don't have the resources for that. And what's the point? It's just like another dashboard that our CEO isn't going to really care about, but it does matter so much. And
Oh,
like, if you're a CRO,
that I will tell you, that is the secret. That's the secret test to me. If you were operating as a CRO or if you were just operating like a VP of sales, that is like, and a lot of times when they promote someone to a CRO position, that is just a glorified version for a VP of sales. To me, even if you don't own all of these functions, the best chief revenue officer is going across all of those functions: marketing, sales, customer success, and understanding the financial mechanics of acquiring a customer efficiently and creating lifetime value. I always talk about it. There's a book by General Stanley McChrystal, which, I'm no war buff or anybody who knows this, but like he wrote a book called Team of Teams. And what was so fascinating about it is he calls it doing your thing right versus doing the right thing holistically. And so when you can have those teams operating in concert, marketing, sales, and customer success, and everyone is basically, uh, let's call it financially aligned to, yes, we are trying to get, everyone's trying to get their leads, their cost per lead, their sales, their MRR, their ARR, and these people are customer success is trying to get, retention and expansion. But if you can actually start to blend across those incentives, and I've done that a couple of times where I've actually aligned marketing, sales, and customer success on, they've got their primary metric that they are responsible for, but somewhere in the 25% of their comp is based upon a shared metric that usually is tied to LTV or net retention or gross retention, something that reminds everyone the thing that we are going after here is a retained, perfectly fit customer. And so it kind of changes the motivations, and you stop selling to the wrong type of customer. I did that at ShoreTel prior to my time at Shutterstock, where I was able to align those teams together because of those aligned comp plans.
yeah, absolutely. And like as a CRO, you're like you said, it's not like a VP of sales position. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're like a steward of capital, you're a steward of revenue, and especially in a recurring revenue business, that means looking at the entire system, like what happens after you sell a customer. If your business model is recurring revenue, that revenue has to recur. So you need to figure out like how do we make sure that it keeps recurring and people stay and expand, hopefully.
Well, and I'll tell you, even at ShoreTel, that was like my first time actually experiencing this. And so it was the first time I had come up through sales. That was my background: sales, channel partnerships, all of that. Right. And so I was promoted into a role where it was a VP of sales and customer success. So I had all of these roles under me, like the marketing SDRs, the sales partnerships, onboarding, client success, support, all of these functions. And so it was the first time that I was having to understand, okay, recurring revenue, it's not just doing my thing right, but doing the right thing holistically. And what we started to see was like, we would do all of this work, we would market, and we sold a unified communications SaaS solution. So if this was also, we had just gone into the SaaS world. We'd acquired a company that was a SaaS platform versus a premises based, CapEx expenditure. And so we were kind of all learning this muscle at the same time, me and, 140 of the folks who worked on my team. So what we found was marketing to law firms, as an example. The SDRs were getting that on a calendar. The sales reps were selling it. They were going back and forth, doing red lines back and forth, right? Getting the contract signed. Onboarding would come in 45 days. It would take so much work to like get them switched over and everything. Onboarding would do it. And then they would go on to customer success or call support. And the first time that they had an outage or some blip in service, they would churn immediately. And because they were a law firm too, like they had everything written in the contract to where they, if it wasn't like 100%, uptime, like they could get out of their contract. And so because we could see that entire thing, I was paying commission to all of these people, right? There was so much energy and effort. And so once we started to see that, this customer churns, we stopped marketing to them. We stopped selling to them. We stopped onboarding them, right? Because the ICP was no longer going to be law firms for this product in particular. It was not the right thing to do. And so it was hard for the salespeople to understand that, right? They wanted to sell to these people. The onboarding people wanted to onboard. But once you aligned that compensation model, let me tell you, things started changing, right? Because the most important thing was not just doing their thing, but doing the overall right thing. And so it was a really good example of like changing behaviors, changing outcomes based upon like aligning compensation, but also just aligning on the most important metric to keep.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love that so much. Like that's like it boils down and validates kind of like all of the principles that we try to um espouse at USC.
I
Like
love it.
it's the whole revenue system. It's not just sales, guys.
Yes.
Nobody wants to hear
Yes.
about like customer success stuff though, but we still produce it.
Oh, I love it. No, I mean, I will tell you, I purposely so I will say, like, for me to be a chief revenue officer, the most, uh, the most defining time of my career was going into being a head of global customer success because it was enlightening and I purposely did it. Like I came up through sales like I mentioned, and then because I saw marketing's encroaching on sales's territory and customer success is now going to own most of the revenue in a SaaS world. So I was like, I've got to understand this customer success motion and everything that's tied to retention and expansion and net revenue and gross revenue, all of that. And so I purposely went and did a stint as a head of global customer success. It was the most enlightening thing. And I will tell you, as a chief revenue officer, it's my differentiator. When I go for at my job at PatientNow, it is because I know onboarding, support, and client success that I am a chief revenue officer at PatientNow right now because that is so critically important. Anyone can hire and anyone can, I don't want to say anyone, but it's easy to find a VP of sales. It is rare to find someone who cares about the full customer journey.
That is so awesome. I love that. Wait, how long
So
did you do
keep
that
on
for?
producing that customer
Hey,
success.
oh, we will.
Keep on producing that customer success content. It's so
Yeah.
critically important. So I did it exclusively for a year, but now since then, it's been in every single role I've had.
Nice.
So for the
That's so
last,
valuable.
yeah, for the last maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I've had customer success under my remit.
Okay, so in line with looking at like segmentation and all that stuff, I had a question about still looking at your time at Chief. So you ran both B2C membership and enterprise sales, but was there ever a time when the B2C motion and the enterprise motion competed for resources, or you had to like choose between favoring one of the two, or how did that work?
Yeah, one of the things that is so critically important to me is this concept that you see in Five Dysfunctions of a Team. If you've ever read that book, it's yeah, I feel like I'm like pitching all these books and podcasts and everything.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, so I will. And customer success is a discipline. So Five Dysfunctions of a Team talks about how the team that you are on is not the team that you lead. It's the highest ranking team that you are a part of. So I had two people on my team, my B2C membership team and my B2B enterprise sales team. And what became really interesting was, yes, there was fight for resources. There always is, just because, you have to do some capacity planning. Typically, the capacity planning was very modelable in the B2C world because it's much more high volume, high velocity. There's a set number of calls a day. There's certain hours in the day. We know how many leads convert into opportunities. We know how many opportunities convert into closed business. So it's actually a very modelable, thing to predict. The B2B side is much more lumpy, right? And so the resourcing plan for the B2B model was much more tied to advanced understanding of pipeline and a target list. And so we had very specific targets because if you break it down to ICP, you were able to know who has a pretty large TAM, a large total addressable markets of senior executive women who are VP and C-suite. And and those are our top targets. Now, that does not mean that between the consumer and enterprise side of the business, that there weren't sometimes people who were on that target list who came in through the consumer side as an option. So we had a lead flow process where they would share leads, usually aligning incentives, but even just aligning culturally around this five dysfunctions of a team, the first team mentality, where we are both aligned on the revenue that we are adding to the business, not everyone's individual goal. So it's that same mentality of don't just do your thing right, do the right thing holistically.
Absolutely. And like we talk about that all the time here too. Like I'm marketing. I'm the marketing team for USC.
Yeah, I'm
Um
looking at her.
yeah. Um and like I'm not judged on, how many leads I get into the pipeline. I'm judged against revenue. So that kind of changes my entire mindset, right? Yeah. That kind of changes my entire mindset around the type of leads I want to get into the pipeline. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at, customer success, the type of leads that stick around and like stay with us, like our true ICP, like we talked about. Um, and I know it's not fully feasible for every single company to do that. And I don't think there's like one playbook that every company should follow, obviously. But having every team in like your direct revenue organization have some kind of goal or like expectation against revenue is so critical just
I
because of
couldn't
that,
agree
because it
more.
gets you thinking about, yeah.
And even if sometimes what you see is like the entire organization has typically the sales teams or anybody who's carrying a quota has obviously their compensation. I think there's a way to change that variable compensation to where, let's call it 75% is on the primary metric and 25% is on that shared metric that aligns everyone across the customer journey. But even like people who are in engineering, people who are in product, people who are in HR, like, there's a way that that bonus plan is structured in a way that the most important metric that funds the bonus pool could also be revenue, retention, net retention, whatever it might be that is like the most important guiding metric for the organization. That is that galvanizing cry across the organization of like the most important thing that we can be doing is being customer centric. And that's fueling it. So that's one way to do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with, like product teams, if they get some kind of
Exactly.
incentive for renewed contracts, so like every customer that renews
Yeah,
their next term, you get like a bit of a spiff or like something like that, because that just gonna make people focus so much more on making the product something that people want to keep coming back to, and you know,
totally. Like,
other than
is
just
it is
like,
it something that's gamified? Is it something that makes payment processing easier? All of those things that you can do to like care about the UX to make people more often to stay with you. All of those elements I think are components that contribute to net retention as an example.
hmm
So
yeah. And so before you mentioned that you learned so much at Chief, I wanted to ask, like, what was the biggest lesson that you learned at your time at Chief, specifically around like go to market, operations and structures and stuff like that?
I'd say number one, you are never done with product market fit. So echoing that a little bit, you are never done with product market fit. And the other thing I would say that I always compliment our co-founder and CEO, Carolyn, on, that she taught me personally that I had a lot of growth around is I used to, when there was a big problem, I would propose a big solution. Like, and I would always come in hot with like, "All right, we wanna solve the enterprise problem. We wanna get to 10 million. Let me tell you how I need a team of 3, then I'm gonna have this, and then we're gonna do this marketing." And I would go big. I would, because to me, $10 million, that's what we wanna do, great. Big problem, big solution, let's go. She taught me the value of testing, iterating, before, and it's because she was a startup founder, right? Like a startup founder is always doing that, and she created that muscle in me, and it was because I had worked at bigger companies, more established companies, less at the startup stage, and so she created that muscle for me so that now I can actually create it with my leaders, like, as they are proposing solutions to me. The only thing I say, like, that we won't do are those things that are one-way doors. But again, imagine a one-way door of, like, investing to get to 10 million. I have to hire a team of 7 and start 'em at, like, what a one-way door decision, right? Like, why don't you do those things that are two-way doors? And that's a Jeff Bezos concept, right? That, like, that's where, like, there's no test, iterate, two-way door. Go in, come back, go in, come back, so that you start to learn what is working, and then you can start to like iterate, change, pivot, and and then get to the point where there's a bigger solution to a bigger problem.
I love that so much. And our CEO, Eddie, was just talking to me about that recently, actually, the two-way door thing, because we're strategizing on all these different things. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Let's do that. This next question, this could be about any company you worked at. But on that, uh, line of thought, what was an experiment you did or a go-to-market bet you made that failed in the experiment? And you had to kind of go back through that two-way door and look at the postmortem and figure out what went wrong and what was the result of that?
Well, I can use the UK as the example at Chief. That's one. Gosh, I mean, I've failed so much, and I think that's actually like one of the other things just to highlight is like the failure muscle. We should not be so scared to fail, especially in a world where as a CRO, my playbook is outdated, right? Everything that got me here is now in this world of AI gonna have to change. And I need to be comfortable with that. I need to have that growth mindset and be excited about testing and learning two-way door it, and to actually get more comfortable with that. So I could talk about the UK. I can also talk a little bit about something that happened at Shutterstock, if that's helpful.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that we can fall prey to, and you do it at every organization, especially if you're interviewing for a CRO position, when you come in consistently, especially if the team is not hitting numbers, what you will hear in every element of your interview is it's the people. It's the people. They're just not good. They're just not motivated. They just don't have what it takes to succeed in what we were doing. And I would say that I fell for that a couple of times. And what I will say is that that is not my hot take is that that's not true. And I can tell a couple of examples if it's helpful of like what I did to kind of change the game on that and to actually assess it. So one of the examples that I have here is at Shutterstock. So our enterprise growth had stalled. Shutterstock is a content platform where marketplace where we connect creators to people who are looking for stock images, footage, music, custom editorial, all of these different types of uh, stock content. And we were selling, it was a consumer play, but then also grew into an enterprise play. And what we had found was despite all of these acquisitions, footage companies, music companies, all of the enterprise growth had stalled. No one was hitting their quota. We'd had 35% attrition and the employee NPS was a 2 out of 10. So pretty abysmal, pretty abysmal. And so people were leaving because they weren't hitting their number. I think it was like maybe 10% of the people were hitting their number. And what I think we saw was that the team was working hard. And of course, upon coming in, everyone's like, it's the talent. That's what the problem is, right? And what I found when I dug in was that the team was working hard, but there was really no structure. There was no segmentation. There was misaligned hiring. There was no repeatable process. And truly, what I would say is no one was actually looking internal. No one, and I always say, first look inward. Like, what are we doing that's maybe contributing to the fact that we are not actually seeing success here? And what you started to see was there was unclear segmentation, as I mentioned. There was no rhyme or reason to how many reps were assigned to any of the accounts. You would have an account who was managing, a $5,000 account as well as $1 million account. It just didn't make sense. There were all different types of industries and verticals that you could segment by that we were not segmenting by. There were a couple of people who had been there for a long time and just were absolutely adamant that they were not going to sell the new stuff that we had brought in. And so there was no expectation of that. And so because of that, they were not hitting their number because all of the numbers were at least built with some version of, growth on these existing accounts. But there were a lot of people who were bright spots. There were so many people who were actually doing the things we wanted them to do. And so I mean, it was very clear what you had to do at the beginning. Like first look inward and go, yes, it's not that there's not a talent problem, but also have we done the plan for the plan? Have we made it understandable about First off, what are the clear segments? Where is their performance already that should be, executed on? And then where is their potential in terms of the account growth that we could be expecting? Let's organize for that in terms of the segments. Let's organize by industry and vertical and maybe size of customer. So we first had to do that. No names and boxes at all. Just what would be the right capacity plan to support this existing customer base and the opportunity that we see. Secondly, what about the talent? Now let's look at the talent. Now let's look at like who is best suited for each of these industries, verticals, size of customer, and where are we seeing bright spots? Who is selling that full portfolio versus somebody who just wants to sell something much more transactional and quick hitting? And then how do we leverage the talent to help coach the other talent? How do we make this fun? How do we make the change fun? How do we make it to where they're helping with the interview process as people start to leave? Like, how are they helping with the interview process and being that leader who we either promote into the position or actually just being somebody who's a subject matter expert that we can call upon to help coach and on ramp someone? So, in the end, we were able to, kind of change the approach. We realized we didn't need as many heads, so we were able to repurpose some, but we were also seeing such attrition that we were able to go, let's keep the best of the best of some of these. We were able to, kind of rehire for the types of, let's call it sales motions that we needed. And then we were able to kind of transition away from, attrition of 35%. We were able to get it to 2%. And change that ramp time for anybody who was hiring from 5 months to 3. And then we were able to get the employee NPS score because we started doing celebratory things. We started making it fun. We started coaching each other about how to win. We were able to grow that employee NPS score to a 7 out of 10. So not perfect, but progress from that 2 that I came in and inherited a little bit. So lots of like learnings around. People will tell you it's one thing. Do your due diligence, listen to customer calls, listen to do ride-alongs, and then also just first look inward and go, what have we done to actually set this org and this team up for success? Because if I had just come in and fired everyone, I'd be in the same exact position that I was when I started, except worse, because I would have now had to do a ramp.
And that mindset, I think, is so, so important for any kind of like revenue leadership to have. Like, not just, just coming in and looking at a problem at face value, but really digging into the processes and what's broken underneath on like an operational level. Being responsible for organization structures. Like, I'm not personally a CRO, but I understand talking to other CROs. It's like a huge, huge part of the job.
Yeah, and I will say that's why a RevOps partner is the most critical hire for a CRO. It's the most like that is what they help with. And I will tell you, with like at Shutterstock, it would take 5 months of planning to actually get the accounts right, to do the segmentation correctly. I will say now with that good work tool, oh my gosh, that stuff is like 2 weeks now. So I mean, AI has changed the game on your ability to segment, to capacity plan, to do all of the stuff that's like accompanying your org structure and the even quota mechanics, all of those things, the modeling that you can do. Gosh, it becomes invaluable.
And I always love hearing that from a CRO because like that's what we do at USC. So it's like, yes.
It's the best.
Validation.
It's the
Woo.
best. It's the number one. It's the number one most important role, I would say.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this episode, I want to ask you a small favor. Take 30 seconds right now, open up the app you're listening to this on, and give us a 5-star rating. It sounds small, but it's the single biggest thing you can do to help us get conversations like this in front of more revenue leaders. While you're there, hit follow so you never miss an episode. Okay, let's get back into it.
Looking back at like all of your CRO roles and even the roles that you had before you transitioned into being a CRO, what did you learn from all of that you plan to take into PatientNow?
Well, I think it is a little bit of that element of the two-way doors and testing and learning, especially in this time of AI. I would say that that had been something maybe I'd been a little more reluctant to do in terms of like automation and being quick with the tools. Now, I am evaluating 3 AI tools, and I'm a week and a half in, right? So I have three AI tools that are on the docket for me to either do a pilot with or is already underway. So a week and a half in, AI is becoming a very critical component to my go-to-market motion. And I think before we would have called it automation or tools or anything. And I think it would have taken, you know, months to get ramped. So I would say not being scared of the test, learn, iterate in AI forward companies make that very easy for you to test and learn and pilot. So not being scared of that and embracing that what I learned at Chief from Carolyn around, you don't have to have a big solution to a big problem. You can test, learn, iterate, and AI makes that even easier. The second thing I would say that I learned at Chief in that I am applying to pretty much every conversation I'm having with CROs and to myself is what I learned actually being at Chief because it was such a consumer marketing play. So I'll go into this a little bit. This is my biggest hot take, I think, and biggest take that I would say people should take even as a B2B SaaS marketer or chief revenue officer. So the consumer world, you think of like the way that you market to that person's much more the perception is that it's much more of an emotional play, that you're playing onto the emotional sides of that because they have to identify with your brand and all of that. Whereas the perception of a B2B, kind of marketing and positioning is much more rational. Usually it has to make you money, save you money to get an enterprise buyer to say yes. And that's not completely untrue, but in a world where LLMs are becoming the way that people are getting found more frequently, I would argue that the world of consumer marketing and enterprise B2B marketing are starting to conflate a bit more. And the tactics that typically motivate a consumer sale are starting to motivate a B2B sale. So I'll give an example. Now people are getting found in LLMs, but the things that's feeding the LLM is earned media or Reddit of all things, or any of those consumer review sites like G2 as an example. So your word of mouth matters more than ever, which is why ICP matters more than ever and why client success matters more than ever, is because people who are leveraging this, leveraging your solution and having a good experience with you now is going to be the thing that fuels the LLMs. And therefore, that word of mouth, that buzz that you get from PR, as an example, all of those tactics that were much more consumery, are now much more enterprise ready. Um, I'm seeing it play out in consumer-led growth too. Like, at Chief, as you can imagine, the referral engine was pretty much everything for us. I had a friend who's a CEO of a B2B SaaS cybersecurity company. Who he sells to are CISOs. So he sells to, cybersecurity folks who, as you can imagine, in that job, that's a very lonely position, right? Because they are a CISO at a bank, as an example. At any moment, if they get hacked, that is their job on the line. Their name is in the paper. And so that's a very like scary position to be. Their entire growth engine comes from community-led growth and referrals and talking to each other. So I said to him, I was like, I would stop spending money on paid ads and I would actually just lean into your community-led growth strategy. Get these CISOs together, have them talk to each other, have them learn from each other. And the flywheel that has created for him is he's spending that money that he would have spent on, let's call it, any of that paid marketing, and now putting it into retreats, gatherings for them, bring them together. They're in a WhatsApp group together already. Like just, kind of, allow for them to learn from each other, to find community with each other. And naturally, the flywheel of that acquisition engine will start to build. I would say that in particular at PatientNow is probably the thing I'm bringing in because the people who I'm selling to are med spa owners. Those are the consumers, those are the customers that we are helping every day. That med spa owner traditionally 70% are women-owned entrepreneurs. They may be a nurse practitioner or they may be a provider themselves. Every minute they're on the call with me or my team is a minute they are not making money for their med spa practice. So in some ways, what I am selling to them and giving to them as our value proposition is not necessarily back-end software that helps with their practice management, EMR, marketing tools, all of that. I am giving them the confidence that we've got you. And that is best told by people who I got, right? My customers who I deliver for every day. So I will be bringing in that consumer kind of motion of community led growth into, what is effectively a B2B SaaS play.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think a lot of people in B2B, or who sell to B2B rather, forget that buying committees, each individual is a C. So there's like
Yes,
a bunch of little
exactly.
B2Cs inside your B2B. So they're
Yes.
people that you're talking to, and people want connection, and they want to feel supported, especially nowadays in the era of AI. And it feels like so much content that we're seeing in our regular meeting places like LinkedIn. It feels so much more disingenuine because you can just tell that people are just creating like AI content, you know?
Totally.
So
What is it? The
yeah,
AI slop, as they're
the AI
saying?
slop, yep.
Yes.
I mean, nothing against AI. Like we use AI to help with stuff here, but when everything you're doing and producing is AI, people can tell. And I think there's going to be a huge craving for that human connection. And yeah, we were just talking today, throwing around the idea of like creating our own like Slack community or something like that for CROs and revenue leaders, and that's what it'd be about. It would just be about them connecting with each other and like
We
networking,
should.
hanging out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, because in a world where there is no more playbook anymore, right? I truly do say that. Like, and this is how we talked about Chief too. Like, it may be the first time that you're facing a problem, but I guarantee it's not the first time that thousands of my members are facing that problem. So in a world where, like, I would say, like maybe even if you went to and got your MBA, that playbook may not work anymore. Like all of that education or all of your 20 years of experience may not work anymore. So you've got to learn from others and those pure networks and that's why I say the community becomes much more important in a world where like people don't know what the exact right next thing to do is. And so they ask their friends, they ask people who are having some success with it.
Absolutely. So, what attracted you to the position at Patient Now, coming from chief?
Well, I love it. So this question yeah, I knew it was going to be really hard to find the next opportunity that like rivaled my experience with Chief. It was so mission centric and there was so much to love about it and I learned so much and I loved my leadership team. I am so thrilled to say that I found the exact right opportunity. I was planning on doing my Camino de Santiago and my Tuscany thing for months. But this opportunity, I will say, and Carrie Goman, the CEO, is a very big part of that. But I'll talk through a little bit of the opportunity. I'd start to say with just the opportunity. So number one, it's a $20 billion market that's growing 15% a year. It is a market with tailwinds. And it is so fun as a CRO to sell in a market with tailwinds, in a market that is growing so fast, and in a market where I actually even know the solution. So, selling to med spas, guess what? I'm a customer.
Yeah,
So, I
that
understand.
helps.
And so I would start to say with like selling into a market with tailwinds where every minute you're seeing another med spa or GLP-1 clinic or you know, uh, dermatologist, plastic surgery center. Like it's a market with tailwinds, and it's becoming one of those markets where even younger people are going, even men are going, and so you're starting to see both, the opportunity where there's real commercial success, but it's also impacting people. And that brings me to the mission element of this. As I mentioned, 70% of med spa owners are women, and these are thriving entrepreneurs who just need help making their practice run smoother. What I do is help make these business owners more money so that they can do the thing that they care about, right, every day. And so that's where like that mission alignment that comes from chief, I think is really, really aligned. And then lastly, I would say the team. Uh, everything from Carrie, the CEO, the second we met, I was like, "This is someone I want to follow." She has a lot of people who have gone with her from organization to organization. When you find a CEO who has that level of followership, You follow them, you get on that rocket ship with them. And then everything I've done in my first weeks have been all about diving into the customer facing teams. So everything across marketing, sales, onboarding, support, client success. And as I dive in and we talked about, the things that are important for the customer, our team has a real pulse for what our customers are craving and real empathy for that business owner who is trying to do the best thing for her practice, and that we are that support engine to kind of be there with a "I got you." And so they've got great ideas about when we show up our best, and also how can we continue to iterate on this and improve that even more. So I'd say honestly, the opportunity, the mission, and the team are the things that I couldn't say no. I had to come home from Europe and take this job quickly and get ready for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, and I feel like the world just needs so many more businesses that are like that and are so connected to their customers, and it just doesn't feel like a sterile, robotic, transaction, but you're actually feeling supported by the businesses that, you use and the tools that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I sit there and technically we sell software, but really what we're selling is the feeling of trust that we're going to help you. We will help you and we will. And that was just like to find that alignment with an organization and in support of, SMB businesses that are trying to grow in a market where they're just really trying to execute on the demand that they have. Like sign me up all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when, like, values match. You always want your values to match the company you're at. So what kind of goals are you hoping to achieve, in the coming, quarters or years that you're there, either for revenue numbers, percentage increases, or just, like, operational projects?
Yeah, I'd start to say, there are certainly revenue goals that we have that are very aligned to, the high tailwind opportunity, that we see, but I think that there's always refinement that you can do with making sure that you are targeting the exact right ICP and that you are delivering the product enhancements that that ICP is most desiring. So that I would say is probably my most critical element, which is customer centricity. So aligning all of these teams and the company around the customer centricity of those that we are designing around. Therefore, it shows up, as I always say, I'm a chief revenue officer, but revenue is a lagging indicator of customer centricity. And so aligning the entire company around how are we designing products that answer the call of that customer and have empathy for that customer. Because as I mentioned, every minute that a med spa owner is on a call with me is a minute that she's not able to generate revenue for her business. And so how am I always constantly showing up with that in mind where I am there to make her more money or save her money or time?
So looking across Chief, Shutterstock, PatientNow, the other roles you've had before, what kind of skills and expertise do you think CROs need to build universally that would allow them to work at such a wide variety of different types of companies that have different, go-to-market motions and structures and stuff like that?
Ooh, I love this question. So some people call my, let's call it disparate experience a liability. And what I would say is it is the thing that is going to make me nail every role that comes up, especially in a world where there's no playbook. Again, I'll throw out another book that Carrie actually recommended. Carrie Goman, our CEO at PatientNow, recommended. It's a book called Range, and it talks about the importance of having in a world where there is no defined path of success, people with range are best suited in to solve those problems. There are other times where there's a very defined path where someone who's like more like a Tiger Woods who from the age of 2 practiced and got better where there's a defined path of success, then it's actually better for you to just practice a lot and have subject matter expertise just on your golf swing and to get better on that. But in a world where there is no playbook, people with range actually do better. So what I would say is I believe that my background in being in sales, partnerships, marketing, customer success, B2B SaaS, unified communications, technology, membership orgs, and now into a vertical SaaS play. I actually believe that that is what allows me to come at these problems with pretty standard, because it's not, it's the playbook doesn't change in the sense that like you still do very similar things. The ways to improve, let's call it new ARR are all the same. Increase your pipeline, increase your average selling price, increase your conversions and win rate. It's pretty standard no matter what business you're around. Those are kind of the levers you pull, and there are just different tactics. And the range can be the thing that gives you creativity in those tactics. Once you've got sort of the understanding of the fundamentals. Second thing I would say is you've got to have a financial acumen. That financial acumen is so critically important so that you can actually make good decisions based upon the data. So, yes, you've got to have lots of range to understand your creativity. So, you've got to have sort of left brain, right brain at the same time. So, you've got to have that creativity that comes from diverse experiences. But as long as you are anchoring everything into financial acumen and data, that always that always helps make your recommendations go very far. And then I say the last thing is, like, a little bit of grit and resilience. I was a D1 athlete.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I bring that up in every interview
Yeah, that's
that I
cool.
have because just having, like, a little bit of grit and resilience and, like, ability to, like, pick yourself back up when things are hard, I'd say, and you don't have to be an athlete to do that. There's plenty of experiences that can give you that, childhoods, like, whatever it might be. But I always
Childhoods, yeah.
I always well, yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of things that I'm sure, people who were dancers, people who, were musicians, like, there's just a little bit of that grit and resilience when things got hard. And those would be things I would say I look for and that I will be carrying with me throughout because I think, in a world where it's uncertain, you've gotta believe in yourself, trust in yourself, and, like, leverage your skills and competencies, but also just have the character of someone who's constantly, like, learning.
I love that, and, I was interviewing, Kyle Norton yesterday for the podcast, and he
Ooh,
did mention
love him.
something. Yeah, he's great. And he mentioned something along the similar lines of, having some kind of outside hobby, where you go into it not knowing if you'll succeed at it. So it's not something that's, like, easy or something that's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna do this." But you go into it feeling like, "I might actually fail at this," and then trying it, and then seeing if you can push through and succeed at it, or seeing if you do fail at it and, like, picking yourself back up and, like, creating that grit and resilience. And, yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that, and, like, it's something we teach kids too always, and it's like you learn in that discomfort. I will tell you on that Camino, day 3, when it was pouring rain for 6 hours, I woke up and I was like on day 3, I was like, "I don't wanna do this." I'm, like, so annoyed at doing this, and of course, like, getting myself to go through it, and I will say it was only through, like, going through that hard day and kind of going, "What is this meant to teach me? What can I learn from this?" And I will say, gosh, I came out the other side. It was day 3 that I actually started, okay, enjoying myself a little bit more, talking to the other folks on the walk, giving myself small wins where I stopped and had some coffee and rested my feet. Like there are things that you can do to kind of get yourself, frankly, motivated to do the things that are hard. And so even just finding out how you can motivate yourself during like, times of being unmotivated or demotivated. That was a learning experience in itself. I was like, okay, so on this day where I have to go walk 6 miles in the rain, how about you stop on mile, at the second hour and have a coffee. And I was like, "Oh, that's a little reward for myself. Okay, let me shrink the change of this 6-hour walk and stop after hour 2, and like there were little rewards. And so these are all these little tricks that you learn when you put yourself into uncomfortable situations. That I've learned that now I will tell everyone, you better go on this Camino. You're gonna
Yeah.
learn so much about yourself.
I love that, and it's just so important too. I mean, like, we try to, like, just talk about, the operational side of being a CRO, but I think these other, like, things are so, so important, and they all bleed into each other. Like, it's all connected. It's not like, just learn how to be like really, really good at operations or really good at finances or sailing or whatever. It's like you have to have this well-rounded kind of personality and like inner world to really, really succeed at all of these other things. Cause all these little pieces and experiences you have, they all lead up to, other challenges you're going to face in your business and your
I
career life.
couldn't agree more. And you said it best. We are all C's, right? We are
Yeah.
all consumer.
We're all
And
C's. Yep.
so like every I always am like, a company is just made up of people. So truly, to be a good leader, you actually just have to love people. And you truly do have to love people and know how to motivate people because your subject matter expertise doesn't win the day anymore. Like once you become a leader, you are leading the people who are leading the people who are leading the people who are getting the thing done. So you've got to have an expert understanding of the data so that you don't have to be in every call to understand how things are going. But you also have to be a lover of people. And that takes change management. That takes grit. That takes resilience. That takes an understanding of the emotional side of like change management. And so all so critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we talked a little bit about playbooks kind of throughout the conversation, but I wanted to ask what has changed in the playbooks or the title of the CRO, the way that you work between what it was like on your first day at Shutterstock versus your first day at Chief versus your first few days now at PatientNow?
Well, I'd say the acceleration of how AI can augment my ability to execute the playbook and my insight on what the playbook should be. So I'd say AI is probably the most critical element. As I mentioned, the planning process used to take me 5 months to do at Shutterstock. That is now accelerated into less than a month to get ready for a new fiscal year. Capacity planning, the models of like what needs to be true from the marketing to, kind of retention models. What insight can we learn about the way that we might want to change the product? So I would say AI has now not just been an enabler for me on the marketing and sales and customer success side, but also getting those feedback loops into product, into finance, so that we are better informed, so that we're better, kind of aligned for an annual operating plan model. So I would say that is probably the biggest change that I've seen, and also just the growth that I've had. I think I was always the youngest leader person, on my team, and I was managing people who had either done things that I hadn't done, or, it was my first time doing it, and so I had nervousness about leading a team of people who were I think I was 30 when I became a VP and I was leading 50-year-olds, and it was I was leading across so many segments and functions that I had never even done. But what I find is that what I can bring into that first off now is more experience and like a comfort with myself. And the fact that I'm like, I got this, I know this. But secondly, like once you align around the customer, like it's no longer about you, the customer or the data about the customer and the funnel and all of those things, the tactics start to take care of themselves. I'd start to say also, like in that environment, especially when you feel like you're trying to prove yourself, um, you can sometimes go too hard in trying to prove yourself. I think it's also don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to ask others what they think too. As long as you've aligned sort of around a North Star or something that should be, kind of guiding principles, I think you could start to ask people questions that then get you to an answer that solves the need for the customer or for the company priority in the best way, and not just in a way that you're like, this is what we're doing because I'm have imposter syndrome and we should go this direction, right? So
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
like not being afraid to solicit that feedback too.
Yeah. I love that. So we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. I just had one more question for you, and I really love this question personally. What's the story behind your revenue leadership that you don't get to tell often enough?
I think it's that my favorite thing is pivots and change management. And if I had to say what aligns me across all of those disparate roles or industries, what I would say the common bond across all of them is that there was a pivot to be done where what got us here won't get us there. And my hot take is that change management is a discipline. It is not just it's all well and good for me to be like, I love pivots and pivots are my superpower, but there is actually a structure to the way that you introduce change, and not enough people give it that due. And I will say, if you want the book on it, go read Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard. This is the way that you can implement a change management discipline with your leaders, with yourself, with your team, and actually hold yourself accountable. And I would say this is something that I did at ShoreTel, at Shutterstock, at Chief, and I'm about to launch it at PatientNow too. I have a deck that basically takes that book and walks my leaders through it. We workshop something, a switch they're trying to make with their team, and we walk through the tactics and very easy strategy that you can use to do that change management. And so I would say it can be all well and good that I love, pivots and a superpower of mine, but I also think that it is so critically important. The responsibility of leadership is to actually have an organized approach to change management. Otherwise, you just came across as chaotic.
Awesome. I love that. What a great answer. All
Oh,
right,
good.
Bridget, this has been so amazing. What a great conversation and amazing, amazing insights. Where can people find you and follow you if they want to follow along with your journey at Patient Now?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. So hit me up, link in with me, send me a DM. Love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If this resonated, please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. It helps us reach more people, and you get our latest and greatest content without having to search for it. And if you're looking for hands-on help in go-to-market strategy and/or RevOps, please reach out to us. We help our clients with everything from annual planning to improving processes in go-to-market, implementing systems to support those processes, and go-to-market AI. We're always happy to offer a free consultation to help you identify the best opportunities to improve your go-to-market engine with or without our help. You can find us at unionsquareconsulting.com, and the info will be in our show notes.